3rd Infantry Division will be preparing to test 2 new Armored Brigade combat team concepts in the next year. The 3rd Infantry is the only heavy division in the 18th Airborne Corps with the mission of supporting the immediate response capabilities of units like the 82nd Airborne Division. While they're not part of the exclusively heavy 3rd Armored Corps, they're often tasked with testing new stuff. The practical goal of the new brigade designs is to create an armored BCT that can defeat a PLA force of 2 heavy combined arms brigades and 1 medium combined arms brigade at a range of 1 to 40 kilometers in a period of 12 to 48 hours. The new ABCT's kill contract includes 40% of each brigade's major fighting vehicles, 45 infantry fighting vehicles, 54 squads, and 45 main battle tanks or wheeled assault guns from each of the 3 threat brigades, plus an armored recon company from each, 15 long-range drones total, 25 artillery pieces, and other assets. Notably, they want the counter-UAS capabilities to defeat 900 recon drones and 288 FPV attack drones. 40% casualties is a common rule of thumb for declaring a unit combat ineffective for wargaming purposes, so that's likely the benchmark of this kill contract, making 3 threat brigades combat ineffective. Within their methodology, they split the battlefield into 4 distinct segments. The furthest forward is the strike zone or unmanned security area, which is bounded by the forward line of sense, what I'm guessing they're going to start calling the floss, and the forward line of troops or FLOT. Enemy forces will be detected in this zone by brigade long-range recon drones and the Cav Squadron's medium and short-range drones, as well as assets above the brigade level. They'll be destroyed by brigade and Cav Squadron loitering munitions and field artillery. The idea of UAS screening for ground reconnaissance units isn't new for the record. I talked about it in my video about US Army Grey Eagles, and those concepts are pretty old by now. However, there's obviously a huge new interest in UAS, so it kind of has to be at the forefront. Next closer is the security zone, or more specifically, the manned security area. This is where Cav squadrons and other brigade recon formations would operate at the start of the battle, charged with providing early warning and attriting the enemy before they reach the brigade's defensive positions. These positions would be located in the main battle zone, or the brigade's close area, and then the brigade rear, where the field artillery, brigade UAS, brigade HQ, and any uncommitted battalions would be located. Essentially, they want the brigade to be able to detect an enemy 9 times more capable than itself at the edge of the brigade's forward line of sense, whittle it down to being 7 times more capable than itself by the time they meet the brigade's cavalry screen, and to 3 times more capable by the time they get within 1 kilometer of the brigade's battle positions. These are correlations of force and means, or COFMs, otherwise known as force ratios. The oft-cited figure of an attacking force needing at least a 3-to-1 advantage to have a 50-50 chance of succeeding is an example of a COFM. The Army's doctrinal COFMs are purely planning tools though, a starting point, and the 3-to-1 advantage isn't exactly historically supported. But that's a different conversation I'm not qualified for. As it relates to the kill contract, they want to be able to render all 3 threat brigades' recon assets combat ineffective in the unmanned security zone, render 1 heavy combined arms brigade combat ineffective in the security zone in close combat with friendly Cav units, and render the 2nd heavy Cav and medium Cav combat ineffective in close combat with a friendly brigade's main force. The enemy's armored fighting vehicles and infantry squads will be targeted largely by direct fire means, meaning the brigade's own vehicles and infantry weapons, and significantly up to 500 loitering munitions out to 40 kilometers and 5,000 one-way attack FPV drones out to 15 kilometers. With that in context, how will the brigades be organized? The latest of the proposals include 2 courses of action that will be tested at NTC rotations. A more divergent version for Raider, the first ABCT, and a more conservative version for Sparta, the second ABCT. Sparta is going to NTC first during the 2608 rotation, while Raider is going during 2701, so Raider has a little more time to reorganize and get new equipment. I'll also be covering a proposal for Raider that predates these new courses of action, is a lot more conservative, and was actually reported on by Task and Purpose back in May of 2025, just on the off chance that they decide not to rock the boat. That's the one with the Brigade Multi-Effects Company for the record. But first, shout out to my supporters in the 66th Shock Regiment, one of 4 task forces that keep Battle Order running. Viewer support is responsible for most of Battle Order's revenue, so I'd appreciate it if you went and took advantage of some of the perks, such as Discord server access, custom merch, and patron-only videos. But back to the video. First, what's the status quo? The Legacy Armored Brigade combat team has only undergone minor changes since 2016. They of course have their headquarters and headquarters company, roughly 129 soldiers that's basically pure staff. The brigade's bread and butter are 3 combined arms battalions. Since 2016, 2 have been armor heavy and 1 has been infantry heavy, meaning 2 battalions have 2 armor companies, 1 mechanized rifle company, and an armor parent regiment, while 1 battalion has 1 armor company, 2 mechanized rifle companies, and an infantry parent regiment. In the case of Raider, these are 1st Battalion, 64th Armor Regiment or 164 Armor, 369 Armor, and 27 Infantry respectively. Each battalion has an HHC, which includes its own scout, mortar, and medical platoons and sniper squad. In addition, each battalion also has a forward support company and direct support from 3rd Brigade Support Battalion or BSB. These are multifunctional sustainment units, meaning the different disciplines of maintenance, distribution, and field feeding are placed under a mixed company. This is how maneuver battalions have been supported since the Force 21 reform employed in the early 2000s. Providing reconnaissance and security is an armored cavalry squadron, which since 2016 has consisted of a headquarters and headquarters troop, 3 cav troops with 2 scout platoons and a mortar section each, an armor company, and attached forward support company. In Raider, this is 5th Squadron, 7th Cavalry, which made an appearance as the OP-4 force in my video on the French Marine Drone Squadron. The brigade was in Europe last year. Providing the brigade fire support is 1st Battalion, 41st Field Artillery. This battalion is equipped with 3 batteries of self-propelled 155mm howitzers and is supported by an FSC from within the brigade. This battalion used to be organic to the brigade, but was recently moved to the 3rd Infantry Division Artillery. However, while it's not on the brigade's MTO, it's still in direct support of the brigade, and the brigade's BSB is responsible for sustaining it. Next, each brigade has a Brigade Engineer Battalion. In Raider, it's the 10th BEB. Originally, this battalion had an HHC, 2 combat engineer companies, signal company, military intelligence company, and attached FSC. However, with the standing up of the 103rd IEW Battalion back in 2022, it appears the MI company is gone. The signal company is still there though. Unlike the light divisions, which are already well on their way or finished splitting up their BEBs in favor of divisional engineer battalions, this is not currently the case for armored BCTs. In fact, I've heard a rumor that they're looking to basically double the engineers in certain heavy divisions, with each brigade keeping its BEB and some divisions getting its own engineer brigade. 3rd Infantry Division might not be the type to get its own engineer brigade, but note that they now have the large 92nd Engineer Battalion, which repatched to the 3rd Infantry Division in December of 2025. This includes more substantial engineer assets like the 497th Multi-Role Bridge Company, construction companies, separate armored combat engineer companies, and highly specialized detachments. Lastly, the brigade is logistically and medically supported by the 3rd Brigade Sustainment Battalion or BSB. Other than the FSCs supporting each battalion, it includes an HHC and distribution, field maintenance, and medical companies as its Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Unlike in the light world, which has been converting its BSBs into light support battalions organic to the Division Sustainment Brigade, BSBs organic to the brigades are still doctrine in heavy divisions. Now for the changes projected to happen in Raider in the coming year. At the high level, Raider's gimmick is that it will have 2 CAV squadrons tentatively called Recon Strike Squadrons. On the battlefield map, they'd both be in the manned security area. The trade-off though is that there will only be 2 combined arms battalions left, reducing the combat power available to fight the main battle. But let's drill down into each of the brigade's redesigned units. Notably, the combined arms battalions and tentative plans are no longer organically combined arms. 2-7 Infantry and 369 Armor would become single-arm mechanized infantry and armor battalions respectively, each with 4 maneuver companies. Earlier proposals for Raider actually had 2 combined arms battalions with the pre-2016 structure of 2 armor companies and 2 infantry companies. That's almost surely still the intention through task organization. My guess is it'll make this somewhat complex task org a little more streamlined on administration, or maybe they want to test out different ways of weighting armor and infantry. It might be some sort of manpower compromise. Although, wouldn't it sure be something if they went back to pure battalions like it was before 2005? Probably not, but permanently combined arms battalions aren't the historical norm for the US Army, so never say never, I guess. At the battalion level, each cab still has its specialty platoons. However, they're repurposing the cab's sniper squad into a strike section. Its composition is unclear, but the first proposal actually called for a 26-man strike platoon for the cabs. Those platoons would have been led by an officer and include electronic warfare, short-range recon UAS, and launched effects sections. The launched effects section would be armed with Narrows Archer FPV one-way attack drones acquired under the purpose-built Attritable Systems program. It's the same FPV drone I mentioned in my last Marine Corps video. I'm guessing the brigades told the division this was unrealistic because it'd require more men than they're currently MTO'd. Given sniper squads are only 10 men and 3 teams doctrinally, exactly what it'll be capable of as a strike section is unknown to me. I'm sure we'll hear more about it since it has a buzzword title. The Cav squadrons are seeing far more drastic changes though. First, they'll only have 2 Cav troops each instead of 3. 5-7 Cav will get its own Legacy Bravo and Charlie troops, while 164 Cav will get its Alpha Company and 5-7 Cav's Alpha Troop. Each Cav troop will have a platoon mounted on the Infantry Squad Vehicle or ISV, which will be resourced from 3 of 5-7 Cav Scout platoons and 164 Armor's Battalion Scout platoon. Raider is getting approximately 51 ISVs, which is roughly enough to give each scout platoon 12. Note that in a standard 6 Bradley scout platoon, each Bradley has 6 soldiers on board, so you could apply that directly to a 12 ISV scout platoon with 3 troops per ISV. In any case, switching between lighter and heavier Cav platoons is a never-ending cycle in the US Army. They'll also retain 1 armored scout platoon though, presumably on Bradleys, which will be scraped together from 5-7 Cav exclusively. Each troop also gets an organic tank platoon, going back to almost how it was before 2005. Not quite, because they used to have 2 tank platoons instead of 1. These will be resourced from 4 tank platoons of 5-7 Cav's Armor Company and 164 Armor's Alpha Company. Each of their 3rd tank platoons will be used to resource a launched effects section per Cav Squadron HQ troop. Under early versions of the plan, this was going to be a 23-man platoon armed with FPV attack drones. However, early plans also included a brigade-level launched effects platoon armed with 4 Switchblade 600s. I'm not sure if that's still the case. The brigade's electronic warfare and tactical UAS platoons are also going to be used to resource electronic warfare and medium-range reconnaissance UAS sections under the HQ troops. I'm not sure if it's still the case, but everything I've seen coming out for about the past year has stated that the brigade's Seaburn Recce platoon is planned to be divested to resource EW teams. In close support, it's likely that each Cav troop will still have their mortar sections, which can be done cleanly with 5-7 Cav's 3 mortar sections and 164 Armor's Battalion Mortar Platoon. They also wanted an SRR section for each Cav troop. This could still be a thing, but again, I'm not sure. Also note that medium-range recon drones are being used as surrogates for long-range recon drones at this NTC rotation, while short-range drones stand in for medium-range drones. This is because of a lack of LRRs available for the rotation. In the final wish list, LRR would sense for the Cav Squadron and Brigade HQ out to 40 kilometers. MRR would sense for the Cav Troop and Combined Arms Battalion between 5 and 10 kilometers, and SRR would sense for the Scout Platoon and Maneuver Companies from 1 to 3 kilometers. Altogether, this results in a change from 6 Brigade Scout Platoons, 3 Cav Scout Platoons, 18 Tank Platoons, 3 of which are in the Cav Squadron, and 12 Infantry Platoons, to 8 Brigade Scout Platoons, half armored, half ISV, 2 Cav Scout Platoons, 16 Tank Platoons, 4 of which are in the Cav Squadrons, and 12 Infantry Platoons. The main decrease in combat power comes from converting 2 tank platoons into FPV drone sections. So I guess welcome to the future, guys, you fly IEDs now. The only company HQ that will be divested is 5-7 Cav's Armor Company. However, the conversion of 164 Armor into a strange half-heavy, half-light Cav Squadron will more profoundly change what options are available to the brigade commander. Tabulating all the fancy stuff, they plan to give each brigade 39 short-range recon drones for Cav strike sections, maneuver companies, and Cav troops, 39 FPV drones for Cav strike sections and the Cav Squadron, 7 medium-range recon drones for the Cav Squadron, and 4 Switchblade 600s. I believe these figures are just for proving the concept at NTC, because the kill contract estimates the brigade will need 500 loitering munitions and 5,000 FPV drones to accomplish its objective. As stated previously, the brigade is retaining its BEB and BSB. I've heard that Raider's BEB may go from 2 engineer companies to 3. Further, the BEB's companies will be converted from lettered to numbered companies. The legacy combat engineer companies were Alpha and Bravo companies, but in the next fiscal year, they'll gain numbers like the 984th and 511th. As separate companies, they'll be AA level units, signifying a parent unit. Their unit identification codes, or UICs, will have AA at the end, whereas before they'd probably end with A0 and B0, meaning they're the Alpha and Bravo companies. AA level units have a greater ability to deploy independently and swap between different battalions and commands more readily. Separate combat engineer companies have generally been larger than their lettered equivalents in BEBs and have been structured with their own field maintenance teams. I'm told the change is to increase the engineer force's modularity, whatever that might mean. It's kind of the opposite of what happened with division sustainment support battalions, where numbered companies were converted into lettered companies to favor supporting their specific division over their ability to deploy alone. For now, the Brigade Signal Company is still under the BEB's control as a numbered company. Sparta Brigade, on the other hand, will likely be a more conservative version of this, as they're going to NTC first and have less time to do conversions and training of ISV drivers. Their focus will be on the internal organization of the Recon Strike Squadron, so their lessons learned could result in changes to Raider's setup in the future. Sparta is likely to retain a conventional structure with 3 legacy CAVs, 2 armor heavy and 1 infantry heavy, and 1 CAV squadron with 3 CAV troops. Those CAV troops would be structured the same as Raiders though, although with fewer ISVs. Last I heard, Sparta was meant to get 12 ISVs instead of 51, which would allow for 4 per scout platoon. Like Raider, Sparta was originally meant to get strike platoons in each CAB HHC and electronic warfare, MRR, and launched effects platoons under the CAV Squadron HQ troop. With all that said, if you've been really keyed in on the 3rd Infantry Division's mentions on Task and Purpose, you might be wondering, where'd the Multi-Effects Company go? Going back in time to mid-2025, there was another organizational design floating around that was reported on vaguely at the time, and which Raider was meant to test during NTC 2701. Really, it was basically attempting to take what the mobile BCTs have been doing with their concepts like the Multifunctional Reconnaissance Company and bring it into the heavy world by creating a space-neutral multi-effects company, or MEC. Its purpose was to consolidate the control and training of electronic warfare, counter-UAS, UAS, and lethal unmanned systems. Basically the first iteration of the new strike platoon idea. While the rest of the brigade would remain basically the same, with a BSB but a broken up BEB, the multi-effects company would consist of 112 soldiers. It'd include those 4 disciplines I mentioned in platoon strength. Overall, they sought for the brigade to field 65 short-range recon drones, 15 medium-range recon drones, and 8 Switchblade 600s, which were the lethal unmanned systems. Given they were resourcing 8 back then, that's probably why each brigade is getting 4 now. They also wanted to field 40 SMASH anti-drone weapon sights and 20 counter-UAS detect and defeat kits. Department of the Army authorizations did not include long-range recon drones, FT-UAS, which was the now-cancelled Shadow replacement, or unmanned resupply capabilities. Further, being space-neutral meant the manpower came from within the brigade's footprint. Under the proposal, 2 mechanized infantry platoons and the brigade's Seaburn Recce platoon would be repurposed to create the MEC. This means the rifle companies and 2 armor-heavy CAVs would be left with just 2 rifle platoons. Not a very good design for anything but a proof of concept. The tactical UAS platoon that was under the Military Intelligence Company was also retained under the Brigade HQ Company, but this was before FTUAS's cancellation. Now, what does this all mean? Well, obviously there will be some major changes to the 3rd Infantry Division, unless it turns out to be a nothing burger. As far as I know, this has been signed off by the division commander, but things can be cancelled or significantly reduced in scope for any number of reasons. If I had to make a prediction, I think the 2 Recon Squadron course of action is somewhat unlikely to be adopted generally. Leaving only 2 maneuver battalions precludes the brigade from forming a strong second echelon or reserve. You can easily picture a situation where a commander in real life ropes relatively weak cav squadrons into doing the work of a combined arms battalion. It happens already. Further, from what I've seen, preliminary assessment is that the new designs don't meet the kill contract because the lethality in the main battle area was left lacking. This is where losing a maneuver battalion would be most felt. It's giving late 2000s when heavy BCTs had only 2 cabs and 1 cav squadron, but back then divisions had 4 brigades and straight up division on core fights weren't in the playbook. We'll see next year. I also think you could ask the valid question of where the 3rd Infantry Division is going to run into 3 PLA armored brigades in real life, presumably in the context of an American division taking on an entire 6 brigade group army to the face. It kind of feels like they're swapping China for Russia, since, you know.
I gave 20 years of my life to the Army, and this is what they did to me?
Bill, it was a different time. It was back when we didn't know the Russians were incompetent.
Although it's not really theirs to question why. Armored force proponents and the staff of a division kind of just have to make the best armored brigade design they can within their means for fighting the type of war they've traditionally been best suited for. In this case, that means integrating the new tech into a more or less conventional formation. The employment of FPV drones and such at the battalion level rather than, say, the platoon level seems sensible to me. 2 recon strike squadrons, maybe so, maybe not.